had imagined that night differently. Candles, soft music, maybe laughter filling the air as we looked back on our years together. But instead, our anniversary dinner felt like walking on glass. Emma sat across from me, her phone face down, her expression tense. I had noticed the distance growing over the past few months, little silences, cold shoulders, late nights she couldn't quite explain. Still, I wanted to believe this night could remind us of who we used to be. When the waiter poured the wine, I raised my glass. "To us," I said softly. She barely lifted hers. "Sure," she muttered. I tried to brush it off to keep the moment alive, but something in her eyes told me she wasn't really there. She was somewhere else, mentally already gone. Then, without warning, she exhaled sharply and put her fork down. "I can't do this," she said, her voice trembling with restrained frustration. The room seemed to pause. "Can't do what?" I asked, stunned. She looked at me, her face flushed. "Pretend. Pretend we're fine when we're not. Pretend that this dinner fixes everything." I didn't say anything at first. My instinct was to calm her, but part of me knew she didn't want calm. She wanted chaos, an outlet for something she'd been holding in. "Emma," I said carefully, "I didn't expect tonight to fix everything. I just wanted to celebrate us. Maybe remember what it felt like before things got so heavy." Her laughter cut through me. It wasn't kind, it wasn't light. "Before things got heavy? You mean before you started treating me like a project? Before you stopped listening to me?" The words stung, not because they were true but because they were rehearsed. I could tell she had been preparing this. People at nearby tables were starting to glance over, sensing the tension. I took a slow breath and leaned forward slightly. "If you're angry, say what you need to say," I told her. "But don't turn tonight into a performance." Her eyes widened, as if I'd stripped away her cover. That's when she exploded. "You don't get it, do you? You never do," she snapped, her voice rising. "I'm tired of pretending we're happy when everything feels like an act." Her words echoed in the restaurant, and I felt the air shift around us. But I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just looked at her, steady, silent, calm. For a moment, no one moved. The waiter who had been approaching with dessert turned around quietly, pretending not to notice the tension thick enough to cut through. Emma's chest rose and fell as she tried to catch her breath, her emotions spilling unchecked. Her eyes glistened, not from sadness but from fury. I kept my gaze steady. "I hear you," I said quietly. "You're angry. Maybe you have every right to be. But yelling doesn't make you more right. It just makes it harder to understand what's real." That calm tone only seemed to inflame her further. "You always do this," she snapped, pointing at me as if accusing a stranger. "You hide behind calm words and quiet faces. You make me feel like the crazy one." I could have fought back. I could have matched her energy, thrown her words back at her, reminded her of the nights she stayed late at work with friends I'd never met. But I didn't. Something inside me told me this wasn't just anger. It was guilt wrapped in defense. So I let her continue. She ranted about how distant I'd become, how predictable I was, how the spark had died. Each word was a knife sharpened by frustration. I listened to all of it without interruption, not because I didn't care, but because I wanted her to hear herself, to realize how far from truth her words were drifting. When she finally stopped, the silence between us was heavy. I leaned back, my hand still on the table, and spoke in a voice just above a whisper. "Are you finished?" She frowned, thrown off. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," I said, meeting her eyes, "that you've spent months looking for something or someone to blame for how you feel. And I've watched you drift away, hoping you'd find your way back. But tonight I think I finally understand. You don't want to find your way back. You just want an exit that makes you look like the victim." Her lips parted, her expression freezing mid-breath. For the first time all evening, she didn't have a reply. I leaned forward slightly, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "I know about the late nights, Emma. I know who's been calling you. I didn't say anything because I was hoping you'd tell me yourself. But instead of honesty, you brought anger to cover the guilt." The color drained from her face. You don't understand," she began, but her voice cracked before she could finish. I nodded slowly. "No, I do. I understand perfectly." The restaurant felt smaller now, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Emma's eyes darted around, unsure how to respond. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped her wine glass, the once familiar comfort of this space now gone. I remained calm, steady, letting the truth sink in without raising my voice or adding a single accusation beyond what I had already said. Finally, she whispered almost to herself, "I didn't think you'd know." "I know more than you think," I replied softly. "I've always noticed when something felt off. I just gave you the chance to tell me the truth. Tonight I realize the truth isn't coming unless I make it real for both of us." The words hung in the air, and I could see the shift. Emma's anger, once hot and consuming, faltered. She froze, her mind racing to process the calm certainty in my voice. It wasn't humiliation I aimed for, it was clarity. I wanted her to see the consequences of hiding behind excuses, of letting bitterness fester instead of addressing the real issues between us. For several long moments, neither of us spoke. Then she looked down at her hands, the tension in her shoulders slowly releasing. I didn't want to ruin tonight," she said quietly, her voice stripped of pretense. I didn't know how to handle everything." I reached across the table and gently touched her hand. "Then handle it now," I said. "Not with anger. Not with explosions. With honesty. That's the only way we fix what matters. Me, this marriage, it all depends on truth, not performances." Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they weren't of fury. They were of recognition, of understanding. She had expected confrontation, drama, chaos, but she got calm, unwavering clarity instead. And that was something she hadn't been prepared for. The rest of the evening unfolded quietly. We talked, slowly and carefully, about the past months, about her fears and frustrations, about my observations and feelings. There were still hard truths and uncomfortable admissions, but for the first time in a long while it felt real. Not a performance. Not a skirmish for dominance or validation. Just us confronting reality together. By the time we left the restaurant, the weight in the air had lifted slightly. Emma's hand found mine, holding it with a gentleness that hadn't been there at the start of the night. "Thank you," she whispered. "For staying calm, for not yelling back." I smiled faintly. "Sometimes," I said, "the most powerful response isn't anger. It's presence, patience, and honesty." That night I realized something crucial. Strength isn't loud and clarity doesn't demand theatrics. And in the aftermath of her explosion, the calm truth I offered had done more than silence the chaos. It had changed the way we saw each other, and maybe, just maybe, saved what mattered most.